It looks like the next form in the packet is called Duties of Guardian.
This form is very easy. It explains to people what they are required to do as guardian. A lot of it deals with guardians of the estate, but some of it talks about guardians in general, and some about guardians of the person. The top of the first page looks pretty much like the top of the civil case cover sheet. You'll complete this with the same name, address, and telephone number that you used on the first page, the civil case cover sheet, and where it says Attorney for, once again write in pro per. Anytime you see a caption box like that, it will be filled out exactly the same way. If you're filling this out with the spouse, both of your names would be up there. And of course, in the box it says Guardianship of the, I'll go ahead and check person, and then write in Lucy's name. Give me just one moment.
Okay, then on to the next page. There's nothing to fill out.
No, just a spot to write Lucy's name at the top of each page. The only other thing to do on this form is to date, print your name, and sign on the 5th page of this form, to state that you've received a copy of it.
Why even have this form?
The court wants to make sure that anyone who is appointed guardian knows what's expected of them, so this form tells them. By signing it, you are telling the court that you've received a copy. You should read the parts that deal with guardianships of the person and guardianships in general to know what you're expected to do.
The confidential guardian screening form is next. It has a top caption, just like the last form, which I assume will be filled out the same way. After that, checkbox to indicate it is a guardianship of the person, and a space to write Lucy's name.
Exactly. The caption is the same. The information on this form is about the proposed guardian, you in this case. On to paragraph 1. Proposed guardian. That's your name, date of birth, social security number, driver's license number, and telephone numbers. I'll just copy that over. Easy enough.
What if I don't have a work number?
I'm just writing none in the spot where it would normally go. This lets the file examiner know that you didn't just skip over the question. Note that I'm not putting NA, which stands for not applicable, as an answer to any of these, because they are applicable, you just don't happen to have a number.
What if I decide with my husband that we should both ask to be guardians? There was only one spot to write the name, date of birth, and so on.
Each proposed guardian must complete their own confidential guardian screening form. This form is about you. Your spouse would complete a separate form. In the next section, items 2 through 19 are a series of checkboxes that, when checked, form a sentence. To each, you would check the box that makes the truthful sentence. So, for example, the first one says either I am or I am not required to register as a sex offender under California Penal Code Section 290.
No, I don't have to.
So the I am not box is checked. If for any reason you have to check the yes, I have, or I am boxes, you would need to attach an explanation so that the court can consider why it shouldn't disqualify you from being a guardian.
That's easy enough. Okay, the next one. I have or I have not been charged with, arrested for, or convicted of a crime deemed to be a felony or a misdemeanor. I was arrested once when I was 19. There were never any charges filed. That was so long ago. Do I need to list it?
Yeah, unfortunately you do. This question catches a lot of people because there's no time limit, and it includes arrests and charges, not just convictions. So what did you get arrested for?
I was out with some friends in Indiana. Back then you were allowed to drink a low-alcohol beer before turning 21. So after a few of them, I was a little buzzed, which wasn't the problem. I just had to pee really badly. We were a long way from anywhere with a bathroom, so I just hiked up my skirt and went in the gutter. Cop was walking by at the time and asked me what I was doing. I recall making a rather rude comment about his mother, at which point I ended up in the back of his patrol car and was taken downtown where I was booked for indecent exposure, public drunkenness, resisting arrest, and destruction of state property.
Destruction of state property?
He claimed I ruined his shoes when he stepped off the curb into the puddle.
Okay, remind me not to ask you about this again.
In any event, the DA decided not to prosecute.
I didn't realize what a rebel you were.
Just young and stupid, or maybe drunk, or both.
In addition to checking I have, you would also check the second box in the paragraph to indicate that you were arrested for a drug or alcohol-related offense, in this case, public drunkenness.
It sounds so bad on this form.
That's why you get a chance to explain. If you have to check yes, I have, or I am in any of these statements, you would attach an additional page and label it attachment followed by the number of the question, in this case attachment 3, and then write your explanation of what happened and why things are different now. So in your case, we'll just summarize what you just told me. Was that your only arrest?
Yes.
Then it's probably worth mentioning that you've reformed your wicked ways.
Now you're just making fun of me.
Okay, maybe a little. Since this is going to be read by the court before ever talking to you, we'll want to be sure to use complete sentences in any attachment and write it in a way that a complete stranger who doesn't know you can understand. When writing, it's often good to write it first on a piece of scratch paper and then copy it onto your attachment when you are happy with it.
Let's see. 4. I have not had a restraining order filed against me in the last 10 years. 5. I am receiving services from a psychiatrist, psychologist, or therapist for a mental health related issue.
What's going on?
Since my oldest child, Jesus, died in a car crash last year, I've been seeing a therapist to help with the depression. It's really good that I've been seeing her, since I'm not sure I would have been ready to tackle this guardianship if I hadn't.
So an attachment for this one needs to be written as well. As you see, your explanation is very simple, and the court would much rather see someone with a treated mental health issue rather than an untreated one.
6. Do I or any other person living in my home have a social worker, parole, or probation officer assigned to him or her? No. 7. Have you or has any other person living in your home been charged with, arrested for, or convicted of any form of child abuse, neglect, or molestation? Wouldn't this have been covered in paragraph 3?
It would have been if it were you, in which case the information in the attachment would likely be repeated, but this also covers any other person living in your home.
If I had to check yes to this, how would I explain it away?
I don't know. It would depend on your specific circumstances, but it might be hard.
8. Let's see. I am not aware of any reports alleging any form of child abuse, neglect, or molestation made to any agency charged with protecting children. Isn't this almost the same as 7?
Similar, but 7 required an arrest. This just needs a report filed with CPS and doesn't require an arrest or even any action being taken by CPS, just a report being made to them.
I think I'm getting the hang of this. 9. Have you or has any other person living in your home habitually used any illegal substances or abused alcohol? No. 10. Have you or has any other person living in your home been charged with, arrested for, or convicted of a crime involving illegal substances or alcohol? Wouldn't this have been covered in 3?
It can, but it also includes everyone else living in your home and is specifically limited to crimes involving drugs and alcohol. In your case, the answer is yes, and so another attachment will be created to deal with your arrest for public drunkenness. Fortunately, it will be more or less the same as your attachment 3. A lot of people are surprised to find that they have to check yes to this because they had a DUI or a simple possession case years ago.
11. Do you or does any other person living in your home suffer from mental illness? I don't think so, although I don't know if the depression counts since I don't anticipate it'll hang around forever.
It's a little uncertain in your case, given the facts, but you can always err on the side of caution and check yes and provide an explanation. That way, it can't be claimed that you kept anything hidden.
12. Do you suffer from any physical disability that would impair my ability to perform the duties of guardian? No. 13. Do I have an adverse interest that the court may consider to be a risk to, or have an effect on, my ability to perform the duties of guardian? What does that mean?
Simply put, is there any reason that the court might think that there is some reason that you might be tempted to do something that would benefit you but would harm Lucy?
No.
Well, there you go then. This question really is designed for guardianships of the estate, so it doesn't pop up too often in guardianships of the person. 14. Were you ever appointed as a guardian, conservator, executor, or fiduciary in another proceeding?
What's that?
The most common reason you might respond that you have is that you were ever appointed a guardian before by a court, or were made by a court into the administrator or executor of an estate after someone died.
My mother's will named me her executor, but she didn't have any property to be divided, so it never went to probate. Does that count?
No, it would only count if you petitioned the court and were named the executor or administrator.
Okay, so no to 14.
Just to save you some time, 15 asks if you were ever removed as an administrator or executor. In your case, since you have never been appointed one, you were never removed as one. As to 16, the answer is I am not, because if you were a private professional fiduciary, you would know how these forms are completed, as you would have filled them out many times. 17 is also I am not for the same reasons. 18 is I am not because you are not filling this guardianship form out on behalf of a corporation.
So 16, 17, and 18 are all I am not.
Correct. Finally, 19 asks if you have filed for bankruptcy protection in the last 10 years.
I have not filed for bankruptcy in the last 10 years.
There you go. The only thing left is filling out Lucy's name, school name, home phone number, and school telephone number. Of course, since Lucy's not old enough for the school information, I'm just going to write none.
What do I do with 21 and 22?
You'd leave them blank. If you were seeking guardianship of more than one child, you'd use those additional spaces for them. Don't forget to date at the bottom, print your name and sign before you make your copies and file, being sure to include any attachments at the end. Finally, although this is the end of the statewide screening form, Sacramento has its own local form that you need to fill out.
Is that the confidential guardian screening form additional page?
Yes, it's pretty self-explanatory. You know your name, your employer,
But I'm retired.
so we'll write retired in line 2 for your employer. Know who your spouse is?
Of course.
So we'll circle spouse in number 3 and write your spouse's name. If you had a partner, we would circle partner instead. And if none, we'd just write none, just to let the person reading the form know you didn't skip over the question.
Right, and write none if I didn't have a spouse or partner. I think I get it. 4 is just a list of people living in the household with me, their birthday, and how they're related to me. Finally, Lucy's mother's name, address, telephone number, and date of birth, and the same for her father. What do we do about her father, since he's in jail?
We use the jail address if this is where he's going to continue to be, but if he were just in for a couple of days, we'd use his home address. We're in the home stretch, but the next form might take a little while, so this is a good time for a short break. Since you have the contact information for Lucy's other grandparents, now's a good chance for you to give them a call to see if they know anything about whether Lucy has any Native American ancestry.
Sounds like a plan. Meet you back here in 10 minutes?
See you then.